Hey, Glenn. That's fun for me to say. So, I have been thinking a lot about that video that you sent out, and I left some brief comments on the YouTube and subtweeted on Twitter. And I've been thinking about whether and how to say more. I decided that I wanted to for a couple reasons. One being that you named me. If you didn't do that, then I wouldn't be using that to platform myself. But the naming me feels like an invitation, which I graciously accept. So thank you. And the other part that is important to that is I really value your work. It's a big deal to me. I think that it is with very good reason that Edward Snowden chose you among one or two other journalists to reach out to. I appreciate all of your coverage of the military surveillance industrial complex. I appreciate the intercept. I know you have some tension there now, but I'm grateful that you helped co-found it. Also want to say I really appreciate your stance on Fox News and the particular the way you go about it. I think that speaking on those platforms, it has a lot of responsibility, and at least the examples I'm familiar with, I think that you have used that well. I'm a big fan of how you took an interview knowing that Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, would be on after you, and the final question that Fox asked you, you just ignored the question and used that time to criticize Bolsonaro, knowing that while he was being prepped to be interviewed, he was hearing everything you were saying just because it was what was taking place exactly before him. That's awesome. I think that's really cool. It also means something to me that your veganism enters into your leftist politics and your journalism work as well. It is hard to find people who care about that, and I know that you know that. My partner works at Love and Arms Animal Sanctuary, where they were being investigated by the FBI, and you defended them in a write up about how the FBI and some powers that be in general are treating animal rights activists as terrorists, and that's wrong. And that means something to me that you did that. So, as another vegan, thank you for that. I hope that I can achieve the spirit of communion that I reach out to you that I'm going for. I'm concerned, Glenn. I'm concerned for you. You know, I had some concern pop up from me when you brought up and or expressed concerns about cancel culture. I know that you know that that's a right-wing talking point. Not that there's no valid leftist criticism there. It's still concerning to hear people talk about right-wing talking points. But me personally, I don't believe that cancel culture exists, or at least nowhere near to the extent that it does on the right, which cancels people regularly, including for lack of access to markets of housing and food. The idea that leftists practice cancel culture in a way that the right doesn't is fundamentally incorrect. So there's that. But then I heard you bring up questions about trans identity and gender identity. And I want to echo what Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams Sensei says, that we privileged people are entitled to all those questions. We are not entitled to demanding people answer us on our time and in the way that we want them to answer us. It feels a little like you want people to answer you in a particular way, and that concerns me. I also want to reference Omawale Adewale, who runs Black Veg Fest, which I know you care about. And in Omawale's workshop on white allyship, he says, I will be honest with you, I'm not totally clear on trans. I don't fully get it, but I'm fucking with it anyway. I don't understand it. He says, it's not on me to get it. I don't need to get it. All I need to do is listen to the people who are experiencing those oppressions and listen to what they say when they describe what they need and what would most help them. That started out as more of a quotation, then turned into a paraphrase. The sentiment is from him. I want you to hear that, because I'm not by any means the best person to be talking about gender issues, which that was part of my hesitation in creating this response video. To go there, I'm gonna name some of the things that were inaccurate in your video. Firstly, specific to me, and then moving from that to some of the things that I would say at large. As far as the stuff about me goes, the one that bothered me the most was the description of the article from the New York Times. We don't redistribute because we feel guilty. That's like that was, to me, in my mind, the whole point of the article is I don't fund movement organizations because I feel guilty for inheriting. I fund movement organizations because I understand that my personal and collective freedom is wrapped up in it. It's inherent to it. I can't claim to be down for the cause and just live off my inheritance without redistributing it in some way. To me, it's a little like saying like the reason that we don't go around murdering people is because we would feel guilty. Like obviously that's true to some extent. Like yeah, like I would be racked with guilt if I were to murder someone, an intense guilt that I wouldn't know how to live with. But that's not the reason that I don't go around murdering people, right? So it's because I don't want to commit harm. Anyway, so that was the thing that most bothered me, as per the stuff about me. But then, yeah, I'm not non-binary. I've never claimed to be. I am a cis man. I prefer gender-neutral language on a political and linguistic basis. I have other like nuanced personal relationships to the pronoun they, but like the core of my preference for gender neutral language. And it is a preference. The core of that preference is a political and linguistic. I think it's weird. I think it's really weird that we have a language that prioritizes the knowledge of other people's genitalia when talking about them. And I understand that the pronouns are not inherently linked to the genitalia, but that is like the mainstream dominant idea, right? Is that like they're supposed to be. So like I think that that's really weird. As a cis person, I think that that's just a profoundly uncomfortable, gross thing that we practice and we think is okay. So yeah, so that's why I prefer gender neutral language. So I don't claim to be non-binary, and even if I did, I think it's really weird that you would show a photo of me to talk about that. Obviously, within the trans and non-binary and queer and gender queer identity and conversations, obviously there's this idea of like cis passingness and cis passing privilege, the same way that there's like white passing privilege. Like obviously those conversations exist, and um, you're an investigative journalist. Again, you're entitled to the question like, what is non-binary? I don't understand that. That's a perfectly valid question, but look it up. Like it's weird that you would make a 43-minute YouTube video expressing the frustration of the confusion rather than looking it up. And there's plenty of good resources out there. There's plenty of bad resources out there too, but there's plenty of good resources out there. And those are the things that I want to point you to, because I'm, again, not the best source. Without being named and shown a photo of, I don't think I'd be making this response video. It's surreal. Like I value your work. In another setting, I would be very thrilled, but it's weird watching someone I appreciate and whose work I value um, spiral. And it's surreal to see that happen in general. And it's surreal to be named in that spiral. I hope that you can receive that. Again, even if I were non-binary, the statement, I have no doubts about Pierce's non-binary status. I'm comma or period or semicolon. I'm sure it's hard to be a man in leftist spaces. That's a weird statement too. And to be clear, I am a white hetero cis male who has spent their life increasingly in leftist spaces, I completely reject the idea that it is hard to be any of those things in a leftist space. Things that might be hard in association with that are like unlearning internalized racism and being held accountable, but it's not hard to be a white hetero cis male in a leftist space. Um, it's not hard to be a white hetero cis male anywhere. I'm sure it's hard to be a man in leftist spaces. I think that statement in and of itself expresses that you do have doubts, which, like, maybe you were picking up on something accurately in this context, and maybe some of your confusion, maybe biases about non-binary caught up with you. I think it's probably both. And it took me a reviewing to catch this, but I realize now that you very intentionally phrased things to never use a pronoun for me, which again, like personal level, I'm fine with, but it shows that you did that. It took me a reviewing, but the trans, queer, non-binary community, I'm sure noticed on the first view. It's also really weird that you had my photo on your phone for 38 minutes before you brought it up. That's just like a surreal thought to me. It's clear you didn't like look up my photo right then, just not knowing my name at the time. That feels weird. To get some like just facts out of the way, non-binary is not a new thing either. Which, like, again, you're an investigative journalist, Glenn, and again, I love your investigative journalism. What I don't love is reactive, defensive 43-minute YouTube videos. I want you to do investigative journalism, and I know you want you to do investigative journalism. You want that for you. Do that. Do that with gender identity. I know that we all have internalized racism that we need to dismantle. I know you know that. I know you know that we all have heterosexism that we all need to dismantle. I hope you know that we all have transphobia that we need to dismantle. I'm going to say this and then I'm going to follow it up. You are racist. You are sexist. You are transphobic. And I'll follow it up. I am racist. I am sexist. I am transphobic. Those are things I'm working on. And it is on us to listen to people when they tell us we are harming them, to take the systemic oppressions out of it and making sure to put it back in. If anyone came to us and said, hey, doing that is a harmful narrative to me, it is our responsibility to listen to that. We are being called to listen to that. And to not listen to that is to run away from ourselves. So when that happens in a context of systemic oppression, and the people being oppressed are telling us that that contributes to a harmful narrative, please, let's listen to them. I think that's the bulk of what I feel comfortable speaking to. But as per those narratives around a masculine femme people being encouraged to, quote unquote, encouraged to come out as trans, there are some good resources from trans and non-binary people. My personal favorite one on the topic is a video from Shonalika. It will be linked in the description. It's the one titled "J.K. Rowling and Transphobia," something like that. That's one of my personal favorite ones. I promise there are others, but yeah, follow trans activists on Twitter. They have so much great stuff, and especially follow trans activists on trans issues. Prioritize, center trans people on understanding trans issues. That seems obvious to me, especially for an investigative journalist, and that's why I'm so concerned. And that's why I want to reach out to you. I thought about, messaging you on Twitter or something like that, but I feel like this is more intimate, and this can carry more the energy I want, like the tone of voice and the allowance for like a little more rambly thought. So please listen. I want to name too. There is a history of leftist people who start expressing concerns about cancel culture and then concerns about gender identity, and they go right. You might think that like that's something you're impervious to, or I can't be transphobic, right? But like we all are. It's a life work. It's not like I'm done being susceptible to being recruited by the right ever. um I want you to know that. And that's why I want to reach out to you in that spirit of communion. I hope that you feel that. Your work matters to me, and it's weird to say this, but you matter to me too. Thank you. And like, reach out to me, talk to me. Like, I'm here. Cheers.